Hey guys, I'm Christina.
And I'm Brian.
And today we want to show you how we use Gaia GPS and try to answer some of the questions that you've had about how we use it. We use Gaia for research and planning as well as navigating and tracking for all of our adventures, from camping and hiking to traveling off-road. You've been using Gaia since
Long before we were doing all this. I started using it ages ago when I was doing ski guiding and backpacking and to some degree rock climbing. But yeah, it's been in my quiver for a while.
Something to kind of preface all of this is that we generally prefer to travel off the beaten path, kind of take the scenic route, if you will. Most of the time when we're out camping, we are in dispersed camping on public land or Forest Service. Another thing to note is that we're using Gaia Premium, which allows us to download maps offline. So when we're in the middle of nowhere driving, we can still access all of our maps. It also gives us access to, I think it's something like over 250 map layers that they have in their catalog. So that's one of the things that we think is the most powerful about Gaia, and so we'll get into map layers here in just a second. We also really love how customizable everything is and the options that they have for organization and just kind of keeping everything tidy. And then we're going to go through how we use Gaia for planning our trips, and then how we use Gaia for navigating when we're actually on the trail, and we'll wrap up with a few pro tips.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Cool. Yeah, sounds great.
And I will be trying to keep Brian on track.
Which is a never-ending task. Because there's a lot to talk about. Should we jump in?
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, so let's talk about map layers and overlays. I think this is one of our favorite pieces about Gaia. So let's jump in.
I do want to say that a lot of our route planning, all of this usually starts on a computer for us. So I'm going to start demoing this here on the computer, then we'll jump over onto the phone and go there. I think the thing that intimidates a lot of people with Gaia are all the map layers and all the options that you can do with the maps that you can download. There's on the premium version, there's over 200 maps that you can download. You can stack them and combine them and turn on and off opacity of all these things. I have found that for us, my preferred map to use is the Gaia Classic Feet. What I like about it is that it's mostly just a topo map. It's got quite a bit of information on it. When we're navigating, it's a very easy thing to see. As far as topo lines, the route, when I draw it on, it stands off of a map really easily. That's quite nice. Occasionally when we are planning, I will use the satellite view, which will give me a little bit more information about where we might be able to find camp and that sort of stuff. Private land layers, we're able to use that for seeing where is public land and where is private land. And then the public land layer shows us what managing agent uses that. And with all of these, I'll just real quickly select this public land layer, and we can see how everything's broken up within a specific area that I'm going to kind of demo us around. And if we want to know what those colors are, we click on that and we scroll down, and then that gives us the legend. And that pretty much works for all of these maps. Like the Gaia Classic one, if we scroll down, the legend of that is huge, and we can actually open it up into another window, which is quite cool. And that all kind of works very similar on the phone.
So how do I actually go and browse what, all the different maps that Gaia has to offer? And then once I've seen those, how do I actually select one to use it?
So over here on this layers button, that's going to open up our map layers. And if there's something that you want to see, and specifically, say maybe you don't have a satellite images downloaded, or you don't have that map added into your layers, basically after you open this layers, you go over here, add map layer, and then this is going to open up all of the options for where these maps are. So United States, Canada, Europe, it's it's super impressive. Even hunting and nautical type stuff are in here. So for us, the majority of the stuff we do is in the United States. And with that, we're able to see national park visitor maps, topo maps, U.S. Forest Service.
There's even wildfire maps of active wildfires or historic wildfires.
Yeah, totally. So when you select what that map is that you want to add, let's say national maps. I've never even looked at this. Let's add this little plus icon. It'll add it, and there we go. That's what it looks like. That will populate back into your map layers. If it doesn't already pop up, you'll find it, hit this little toggle button on the side. That will turn it on. And then to turn it off, you click it. If it is something like, say, the private land map, that's going to pop up, and then we get to see all that stuff added to the maps kind of stack on top of one another as you turn them on. So having that base layer map that you want is important. So that's just why I like using this Gaia Classic Feet, as it's a really great base layer to start building on top of.
I think too, it's like when you're first starting out with Gaia, it's really important to not get overwhelmed with all the different maps. I think it's great to like go in and check out all the different options that are there, see what works for you and like what your preferences are for what kind of map you would want to use. But I would say pro tip for beginners is like only you start with one layer, maybe two, and just kind of go from there.
Yeah, I would probably start with like the Gaia Classic Feet in meters or feet, whatever your preference is. And then like satellite is super helpful. I do want to add one other thing, like with this public land layers map, when I turn that on, there's a bar underneath of that, and we can turn the opacity of that layer up and down.
So you can kind of see the map that you put on top of your base layer. You can kind of turn it on or off, like, and see through it, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
So then what's, I also see the tab on there that's called overlays. What's that?
That gives us a whole bunch of options for the information that we see on top of the map that we have already selected. So our waypoints, for example, if I click that on and off, all of our pins that we've dropped and that sort of stuff will turn on or off. Our waypoint labels, so again, like the labels that are associated with those pins, will turn on and off. I prefer to have my labels off because it just keeps the map cleaner. Our routes we can turn on and off. And areas is like if you've drawn a box around an area, you can draw boxes in shade and have like specific areas of interest. Public tracks. This one's kind of cool. I do like using this, and we can talk a little bit more about what I use this for later, but this will show in these kind of like faint green lines that if you hover over them will become selected. Those show other users' data that they have chosen to publicly share. You can choose to turn your tracks to either public or private. We've got all of ours set to private. Save trails, this is probably like hiking related. I've never really played with this one. And then grid overlays allows us to turn on like UTM lines or lat long lines. Yeah, a couple options for how the map is sectioned out. And it actually shows, like degrees. 46.75 degrees north. Kind of cool. Not information that I like to see on our map, so I have that turned off.
And a lot of this is just preferences.
Totally.
So I think you're going to want to just end up spending some time playing around with Gaia, just getting familiar with it. I think doing that on the desktop before you actually go out on the trail is a great place to do that.
Yeah, or do it on your phone. Like play with it like non-consequential environments.
Yeah.
Like if you've got a local park, we'll get to this in a section, but draw your route to go for a hike around the park and track it and see how it works. And probably not on your first big trip out using the app is the place to like practice.
Practice and at home, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
So now that we've gone through map layers and overlays, let's talk about how we actually keep all of our stuff organized.
Yeah, let me start my screen recording again so that we can see this. One of the things that interested me in Gaia so long ago was the folder system that we're able to utilize in here. And you can basically create this in any way that you see fit. What I have is not what I recommend, it's just what I use, so proceed with your own style. I keep track of things within every year that we've done it. So we've got a folder starting in 2021 that goes to all the way up to current. And in each of those is how I organize all the trips that we've done historically. So whenever we're out taking a trip, I record our track for that day. I save it, and I save it into this folder. What is super helpful about that, and where I think it can really help keep this map organized, is to the side of these folders, you can see this little icon. And basically that's a little visibility icon. So we can turn all of these off as we want. Like for right now, the information that you're seeing on my screen is the places I want to go. So I've got a folder that I keep in all of this of recommendations that we've gotten from friends, like YouTube videos that I've watched. I'm like, oh, that looks like a cool area. I'm going to drop a pin there. A whole host of things, tracks I want to drive, overland routes.
Yeah, so it's tracks and waypoints. Like it could be like, oh, we know that we're gonna want to stop here to get propane or fuel or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Where can we find water?
Yeah. So that, I think the folders are the foundation to that. Whenever, like I said, whenever we download something, it goes into a corresponding folder, places I want to go. There's one in here for supplies for like when we're in Mexico or up in Canada and traveling around. I'm like, okay, where is going to be our next fuel stop? And what I will do, I'm just going to drop a pin here and just show it as an example. Once when I find that place, I will save that waypoint, and then under this icon at the top, we can name it. And this is just going to be, I'm just going to name it random example. If it's the airport, we can drop a plane for it. If it's a spot that's got a really pretty view, I'll probably drop a pair of binoculars to indicate that. If it's a spot we've camped, I put this little tent icon. I think there's a house icon that I'll use, like if we've got an Airbnb or something like that. There's a propane thing in here, and you can search all of this stuff as well.
So many emojis.
Yeah, there's like emojis you can use, all sorts of cool stuff. And so then I'll use the icon. Let's use the example of places that I want to camp, like a recommendation from a friend. If it's a spot that I found on satellite image and we haven't been to it yet, and I haven't been able to confirm through photos or a little bit more information that this is a really stellar campsite, I'll color it red. If it's something that I know is like a really stellar camp spot, either from like direct word of mouth or photos or whatever the example is, I'll color it green. And so that kind of gives me another layer of classification that I can like real quickly identify what that is. And there's a whole host of colors you can use down here. And then once I've got all that information, I'm just going to save this right now. The next screen that'll pop up is all this information, and then we can change the folder and I can label it to where I want it to go. Since this is a random pin, it kind of looks like it's on a cool peak, and we don't actually need it. I'm just going to archive it, and away it goes.
And same with our routes. When we're actually driving or planning a route, you have a color coordination system as well. Yeah,
so what is on my screen right now, and actually this is a really great example of this, going back to our color coding system. This is where a spot that I wanted to camp specifically. We did go to it. It was stellar. Someone was there. We didn't camp there. The other information that you're seeing on the screen is this is the Washington backcountry discovery route that's loaded currently. I use red as routes I want to drive. Within the backcountry discovery route specifically, they have like harder options. So I usually color those black to, like black diamond, kind of easy reference point in my head. So red is what I want to drive. Black will sometimes indicate a harder alternative. And then let me just turn on our 2025 adventure. Some of this, and I'll turn off the places I want to go. So now you can see everywhere that we did drive and the spots that we camped. Everywhere that we drive, I label as purple. And the reason why I do that, and the reason why I chose red against this base layer, is those colors stand out really easily to navigate on. So when the truck is bouncing around, I can be like, it's just like very quick and easy to look at. I don't know why I chose purple for where we've been, but it's just a nice color against this map. I like it.
And I think that something that's a tip for someone that is new to using Gaia, when you're starting to actually add waypoints and routes, just setting up an organization system from the get-go is going to make it a whole lot easier to keep everything organized. Of course, you don't have to do exactly, the organizational system that we use,
No. Yeah.
but just something that makes sense for you.
Start organized and stay organized with this is super important because, right, we've got almost 5 years of travel data into this.
Continuous travel data.
Yeah, and it can become a lot very quickly. So being able to break it down in folders that you can turn on and off, colors that you can very quickly understand. I'll give an example. We know a couple folks that when they're planning their routes, they planned their days by specific color. So like day 1 might be green, day 3 might be blue, day 4 might be orange. And I think that's great as long as your plan for each day works out. But, if something happens, you get off schedule, suddenly your blue day is your orange day. And it's just
I think one of the things that, and we'll reiterate this again and again, is that flexibility is one of the biggest things that you have to have when you're out here doing these kind of off-road trips, is you can plan all you want, but
they're variables.
There's so many variables that are going to be outside of your control. And so everything that you're doing to plan your trip in Gaia is just going to be a starting place, and then you'll see how it actually plays out.
While we are talking about organization, I do want to show this. While we're in this saved items folder, this filter view at the top allows us to see what shows up in this column under the saved items. If I turn this to all items, suddenly this becomes a just absolute mess of information. There's all sorts of stuff in here. So you can use that to your advantage in some ways, like if you want to just see routes specifically, but I like to have this set to folders, and then that allows, I'm going to turn off routes, that allows me to see the folders under this, and then from this view is how I can turn things on and off. You can change how it's titled by when you created it to the title of it. Yeah, we should probably go this way so that things are, that looks way. I'm refining our system as we speak.
Perfect. Okay, cool. So now let's actually jump into showing you how we actually use Gaia for planning a trip.
Yeah, this is where we spend the bulk of our time with Gaia. I think this is where you can really set yourself up for success with utilizing everything that's available here. We do a lot of the backcountry discovery routes, and I think using that as an example for this is a great place to start. I've already downloaded Backcountry Discovery Route North. It's super easy to import these. So now that I've got this route downloaded, what I'm going to show you is I'm just going to click it and drag it right into the open web page of Gaia. That's going to ask me, it tells me it's a large import, it's got 112 items in it. I can select whether or not I want to import just the waypoints or just the tracks or both. We're going to do both for this example. And then that immediately pops up on the map of where all this stuff is. And I can choose save. We're going to go ahead and save it. And this should save in a folder labeled with all this stuff. Exactly, folder, California Backcountry Discovery Route North. In that folder, we can see all the icons, all the items. And they break it up into individual colors for each section that they recommend. For me personally, I would go through and adjust all these to the colors that I would want these to be. Maybe label them all blue, maybe label them all green. I don't know. That's where I would start with that. Yeah, and we can see that we can actually see that I've done this twice. So as an example, let's say we've done that twice. We can archive it, and away goes all that information.
Cool. So then maybe let's jump over to a route that we know that we've done. The Washington Backcountry Discovery Route is one that we did this summer. Mm-hmm. Let's jump into that and just take a peek. So we downloaded the GPX file from the Backcountry Discovery Route website.
Yep.
Imported it into Gaia. We were able to adjust it with, all the color coding that we wanted to use.
And then we put it into the places I want to go folder.
Yeah.
So again, keeping that
your organization.
I do just want to show you. So like this California BDR, the items, if we select one and then we select all, these little icons, if you hover over them, will show you what they mean. Careful of selecting archive because they'll all delete. Or you can select file to, and then I can change all of these from the BDR folder that downloaded to the places I want to go folder. Once when that has happened, then I will actually archive that parent folder. So now everything is in this places I want to go folder.
One of the things to note is I think starting from, especially if you're feeling a little overwhelmed by trying to like make your own route from scratch, starting with an established route that others have done before is a great way to start. And then from there, being able to kind of venture off into like little side quests, so to speak.
Yeah, totally.
We can show you, we generally, when we're going to camp off of a route, we try not to camp like right next to it. So we'll look for different routes that are like little side roads that we can take to find camp a little bit further off. I think you've got an example of that.
Yeah, and actually this is a perfect example. So when we were planning our Wabater route, I had picked a few spots that, like this Bethel Ridge spot, looked like it was going to be an incredible camp spot. We could see that the topo lines told me that we were going to be on top of a ridge. I could see from that we were more than likely going to be able to see Mount Rainier in the distance over here, which we were. It was unbelievable. There were a handful of other things pinned here already in the Wabater folder that when I downloaded gave me like points of interest. This is a great example of a spot that is off of a main route that looked like it was going to be a good spot to go to camp. Unfortunately, when we showed up there was somebody in that spot. So kind of like we were talking about, flexibility in your planning or just flexibility while you travel is super important. Our backup for this was I just like jumped on the map and I just started looking for other points that were up high that would offer us potentially similar views. So some of this, like this spot was pretty interesting. There was a spot down here that we checked out, but again, you can see high point. If we're going to draw something to a new spot, we click create route. It gives us a little example of how to do it. If you click and scroll, you can scroll around, but then when you click again, it'll snap that icon to the closest road and then immediately follow that. You can turn that snap feature on and off, snap to trail right there. So we can select straight line, snap to road, snap to trail. They've also put in a cell phone coverage in here now, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, we can draw our map, we can change our color. I like using red. We can change its name and then we can save it. And then again, we can change it to a folder. So I would go places I want to go. We're not going to keep this, so I'm going to archive it.
Something else that we also look at when we're starting to venture off of the established route that we've maybe downloaded is we're going to go back to using those map layers. So looking at things like public land and land ownership, especially when you're in an area that you're maybe traveling through Forest Service. A lot of times there might actually be private land interspersed there, or even when you're traveling on public land.
Yeah, so I think if we want to touch on that real quickly, like the two layers that I like to use for this, like when we're researching where to camp, I guess it's 3 layers really in total, or the Gaia Classic Feet, the public land map, which again shows us the managing agency for that particular piece of land, if it's Forest Service or BLM or state or whatever, and then the private land layer map. So with that, we can start to see that, again, if we look at our icon, we can see green is Forest Service. As we start to get into public land, or private land rather, we start to see all these boxes that will show us the owner of these particular parcels of land. So just a really great thing to know, where you can legally hike or hunt or whatever you're trying to do. So that gives me a really great starting point to determine whether or not we are legally able to camp into that area. The next step that I might do with that is turn these layers off, and then I might switch over to satellite just to kind of determine a little bit more information about that particular spot. Topo map, like this Gaia Classic, will show you whether or not it's treed or shrubbed or so on, but it's nice to know how dense is that area. Like, are we going to get a view? Is it going to be in the trees?
So yeah, so starting from the established route, you'll kind of look for roads that maybe lead to high points, or if you're looking to camp next to a lake, look for something that leads to a lake.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's kind of like our course search, like the first round. And then, like Brian said, switching to satellite once we have kind of zeroed in on an area. That way we can see a little bit more refined view of Does it look like people have camped there before? Is there maybe a turnaround, like a fire ring? Things that would indicate that people have camped there before, because we want to make sure that we're not, creating new campsites necessarily.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. What's the saying? The best campsites are found, not created.
Exactly.
And with this, you can see like it does also label campgrounds. So, that's a really great way. If you're trying to find dispersed camping, that's there. If you're trying to find campgrounds, that's there. We could do a whole master course on specifically how we find camp spots, because
there's a lot.
It's a lot, and it disproportionately takes much more time in the route planning process than just drawing the route, I think.
Yeah, we're not necessarily just using Gaia. We're also going to be using other tools, right? Like things that you've seen on the internet, or looking at Street View in Google, or iOverlander, all sorts of things.
Yeah, there's no one single tool to best be able to find those informations. I think it's just pulling all these little ingredients together. Yeah,
we also spend a lot of time just like as a hobby, as a pastime. We just love staring at maps. So that is actually one of the just like quick ways to share with you of like how we find camps, is we just end up spending a lot of time just scrolling across a map, whether it's on a topo map or then also on satellite. It's just kind of one of our favorite things to do. So one of the things also to call out is when we had been planning the Washington Backcountry Discovery Route, Brian had done some of that scouting, had found this spot on top of Bethel Ridge. We're like, oh, that looks amazing. Let's try to camp there. We got there, people were already there, so we had to go to kind of plan B. We found this other ridge that looked amazing, gorgeous views. We got there. It was so windy and so cold. There was no way that we were going to be able to happily camp there. What was the next thing that we did to try to figure out where we were going to find camp for the night?
The next thing was I just kind of just started looking down the road for areas that, this is going to be pretty specific to the Wabasha, like this part of Washington. I just started looking for lower elevation areas, so looking at the topo lines. I was looking for treed areas, so I was looking for zones with this like green shading.
To try to get out of the wind.
Yeah. And so I sort of pointed us in a direction that had a lot of roads that would hopefully have small dispersed spots off of them. I was looking for an area that had trees, and with that, we just honestly just started driving, right? And we were able to find a road off of a road, down another road. And it wasn't a great camp spot, but it was a comfortable camp spot. And sometimes comfortable is the winning factor. But, I knew that we couldn't go too much further down that road, because looking at the other layers of the map, going back to private land and so on, we were about to hit private land. So we sort of had like this window, this range of areas that I was looking to find camp in.
So again, this just kind of comes back to one, being flexible with what your plans are, but also having a little bit of a sense of what is around you from being able to look at the map, and having those things downloaded, just generally being able to read the map and see, okay, we're going to go down in elevation to get a little bit warmer and try to find an area that might be treed to get out of the wind.
Yeah.
Okay, so another thing that we want to be able to try to figure out during our planning process is determining roads that we can actually drive on, that our vehicle is going to be capable enough for, our skill level is. Like, how do we determine those road conditions from the tools that we have in Gaia?
That's a little bit of what's available in Gaia and a handful of other places. A lot of that starts within Gaia with looking at the legend of the map. So if we go to this map's legend and we look at the roads, what we can see within this particular area on Bethel Ridge, this road is a secondary road. Usually safe to assume that these secondary/highway roads and even these minor roads/streets are going to be capable, like most vehicles are going to be capable of driving this. And we sort of know this from our experience on this road. For example, like up until this intersection, you could drive a two-wheel drive vehicle up there, no problem. But where this particular view spot is, we can see that road is a track, unmaintained road, high clearance road. And this is where it kind of starts to get interesting. My next usual assessment from this point is we will switch over to satellite. I'll just switch these layers really quick. Whoops. We'll switch over to satellite and see, does this satellite image have enough resolution that I can see what the road looks like? Sometimes Gaia's satellite image is better than Google's. Sometimes Google's is better than Gaia's. I can't see a whole lot of information based on this road, so I'm just going to click a point. I'm going to copy these coordinates. I'm going to jump over to Google. We're going to go to map. I'm going to paste those coordinates, and then we're going to zoom in and see what the road looks like. On Google, definitely this spot, the resolution is a lot higher of this road. And what I can see is that it's a 2-track road. The 2-track and the tightness of these turns compared to the road that's below it is a really good indication that this is probably going to be a 4-wheel drive road.
Yep.
The other thing that we can utilize is street view. We can see that that secondary road in this image, it's a pretty grainy image, but it's a pretty good surface. The legend within Gaia, we use satellite image within Gaia, and then we use satellite image within Google. And we just we pull a lot of that information together. We try to utilize these geotagged photos to see, this is a great example, who took that photo. Maybe their vehicle is in that photo. In this, we can see that a Subaru is in this photo, so that at least tells us that a Subaru got to this spot. It's not always the vehicle. The driver has a lot to do with this as well. Sometimes people will get vehicles in places that arguably shouldn't be in, but this information does give us a lot of really great references. Let's see what this other one is. This is from a truck. So we can at least assess that a range of vehicles from a truck to a Subaru can get here. We can see the road again. The road looks quite good. I would argue that a 2-wheel drive vehicle can get here just fine. As we're doing research in areas that we want to go or we're planning to go, we're utilizing these street view photos for a lot of our research. I think that really is just an incredibly useful thing. But Gaia doesn't have a trail rating system. I think even with some of the other apps that do have trail rating systems, all of that's so subjective to that driver's experience, the vehicle that they're in. Like, something that's very easy for us is hard for someone in a sedan, and something that's very easy for a Jeep would be hard for us in our truck. That information is just super subjective.
And not only that, but trail conditions can change. Like, there may have been a huge rain event and there's now a washout, or like there's
100%. I mean,
totally change the difficulty of a section that you're going to drive. So again, you can only plan so much. You're going to also have to make those on the spot assessments of, can your vehicle handle it, and do you have the skills, knowledge to handle that situation? And then also, like, do you have the recovery equipment in case you do get stuck?
Yeah, like what you're saying. We ran into a perfect example of that this spring, using Street View to assess the situation of a road that on a map was labeled as a 4-wheel drive road. The Street View, it had recently been graded.
Yeah, it looked great.
Looked wonderful. And we started up it, and it was rowdy.
Spicy, for sure.
And we made an assessment. We're like, I think it's not so rowdy that we can't handle it at the moment. We'll go until the point that we can either successfully drive it or we make the judgment call to turn around.
One of those where I end up closing my eyes while we're driving up it.
Yeah. And it's not always like that, but flexibility.
Yeah.
Flexibility is super important. But those are the tools that we utilize. I do want to mention one other resource that we use for determining road conditions. In addition to using Google, we will also use iOverlander. And the way that we do that, and this isn't always available, but I think it's a really great reference to check, especially for areas that you've never been. I will just select a pin randomly around where I'm trying to find camp or trying to determine road conditions. I will copy that. I will jump over to iOverlander. In their map, I will paste that, and it brings me to that general area. And then from there, I can start to zoom around and see occasionally people will drop pins related to road conditions or specific obstacles or hazards or that sort of stuff. But right now I can see that there are not any road hazards for that spot specifically. There is a pin, and it's a camping pin. So I'm going to click that and see what this person said when they went out here. Epic views, plenty of dispersed camping along an easy 4x4 trail. So that at least, gives me a really great reference point. The other review is this person talks that they took their 4Runner out here, and in the photos, I can see their vehicle. Maybe they'll put some road condition photos in here, who knows? But at a minimum, at least this is another piece of information that we can pull from to try to gather more information.
So bottom line is determining road conditions is kind of investigative work, right? But it's
yeah, especially if you're hundreds of miles away from a zone. Maybe if you're like really planning a big route to an area you've never been, like see it all the time with the Baja Facebook groups. People ask on those dedicated forums on Facebook, like, what are these specific road conditions like? Has someone traveled it recently? The same is true on Reddit. And there's probably a Colorado Overland Reddit group, and be like, hey, has anyone driven this road specifically? What were the conditions like? And again, flexibility, maybe.
I think too, as you get into more remote areas, is going to be even more important for you to be able to do your own investigative work on what the road conditions are going to be like. Because unless you're only sticking to trails that have a specific difficulty rating and that's like your thing, great. But like if you're trying to get out and do these adventures that are off the beaten path, it is really critical to be able to assess that on your own. Something else to call out is that it definitely depends on where you plan to be recreating. Out west, it's way easier to assess trail conditions and this kind of stuff looking at satellite, because there's not that many trees to obscure the trail.
Yeah.
Back east, it's definitely much, much harder to scout campsites when you're looking at satellite view that way. So you're probably going to end up relying on other resources like iOverlander a bit more.
Yeah, or local organizations or
Yep.
that sort of stuff.
Lots to talk about when it comes to determining road conditions. But
yeah, and it just, a lot of it is trial and error. A lot of it's personal experience. Something that I didn't mention earlier that I should have, I will look at the topographical lines of a particular trail. Like this, what I'm looking at right now, for example, these topo lines tell me that this road is on a fairly steep hillside. There's probably a good likelihood that this is a shelf road. Let's just go through the same thing that we've talked about. Let's copy it into Google Maps and see. We can gain some more information from it. It doesn't look like there's any street view here, but going to satellite image, I can see that it looks like a fairly wide gravel road. Not quite a single or a narrow double track, but it's definitely not like a bigger gravel road. So, those will be really good indications. If that road is going more steeply up the terrain, it will cross more of these topo lines very quickly. That could give you a good indication that road is quite steep, maybe rocky and so on. That's been our learned experience, is that usually steeper roads are rockier. Flatter roads are usually a little bit more of a smoother surface.
usually,
but not always. Again, variables. Yeah, so learning to read topo lines and kind of starting to be able to digest what that information means is pretty important.
should we now jump over to show you guys how we use Gaia when we're navigating?
Yeah, so everything that we've done up into this point, all the research and so on, I prefer to do on the computer. It is possible to do it on your phone. What I like about being able to use the web-based platform is that I can have multiple tabs open and kind of jump back and forth, like trying again to pull as much of this information together as I can. Once when I have a route, the next step is actually navigating this thing. So I'm going to start a screen recording.
A lot of times when we're navigating, we're using Brian's phone, or sometimes we'll use my tablet. You'll want to make sure you've decided which one you're going to use so that you can download your offline maps to be able to use when you're out there.
All right. When we're navigating on the phone, Again, the layer that I like to use is this Gaia Classic Feet. And again, you can use metric if that's what you want. In the US, so I'm going to use feet. But I like to use this layer because as I zoom out, this information's like the information that the map presents is pretty simple. It's only a handful of colors. My routes, like for example, you can see this red line that I drew. This was a hike that we wanted to do. They stand out very clearly against the map. I think that makes it just so much easier to use. So to find ourselves on the map, we're going to press this little triangular icon in the bottom left. That's going to center us on the map. If we press it again, that will change the map to where it is pointed in the direction that my phone is pointed. I especially like that for while we're driving. So when we're driving down this road, if we need to make a left off of it, presents that information on my screen as a left. It's just kind of simplifying it. Christina prefers it to be pointed north constantly to where she knows if you're turning east or west or south or whatever the case may be. I'm just going to real quickly draw a route on my phone. I've got this little, in the bottom left, you can see there's a little green magnet icon turned on, and that will snap this route to that road. We're just going to pretend like this is going to be how we're going to drive out of this zone. Again, I'm going to use red because it is the color that I navigate off of. You can choose whatever color you want. I'm going to save this into places I want to go, and we're just going to save it. Now we know, and I didn't connect it fully, but we're close enough that we can get there. Now we know that that's the way that we're going to drive out of this for imagination purposes. Once when it actually comes to driving, this is personal preference. I like to record everywhere we're going. To do that, it's so simple. It is this information at the top here is totally changeable. So we can change our elevation, our distance, our speed, our course, so much stuff. I like to have elevation and distance turned on just because at a quick glance, I like to know, especially this time of year, the lower we can camp, the slightly warmer it'll be at night. The distance I like to know just for, I don't want to drive a whole bunch of miles during the day. So after 40 or 50 miles, it's time to start to look for camp. Another thing that we should talk about real quickly is downloading these offline maps. So if I click maps over here, top right is save offline maps. What is already downloaded is going to show up as red for this particular area. Let's suppose I hadn't downloaded any of this. And what we do is we're just going to draw out, let's orientate this north. And I did that by tapping that little compass in the top right. I'm just going to draw out the box that I want to download. You can make it as little or as big as you want within reason. It does have some download file size limitations. Now that I've got this area selected, I'm going to hit next. And this is where that size comes into play. We can select at the top the resolution. I'm going to select high, and then on these map layers we can see that I can download 21 of 100,000 tiles. This Gaia Classic Feet, I think this is the other reason why I like to use this layer, is we can download an absolutely massive map. We can download satellite in here as well, and if we select that, we can see it's going to download 740 of 100,000 available tiles. And the same we could download with private land. So whatever we select here, when we hit next, we can choose a folder to save it in if we want. When we click save, this is going to download that information so that it's available offline while we're traveling, which once when we're out in these remote areas is super important. So now that we've got it downloaded, once when it's time to drive, I'll hit this record. Since my phone battery is low, it's going to tell me about battery saver mode. I'm going to say no. We can select any number of activities. We're going to pretend overland for right now. And then, yeah, it starts recording as we travel around. It's going to trace a line on the map of everywhere that we have driven. It kind of automatically selects a color.
And just to note, we've used this for driving as well as hiking, or even like floating the river if we want to see like where we went and get some of the statistics about what that, speed was or whatever. You can do that all through Gaia.
Once when you're done, click that record button again. We can pause our recording, finish the track, or delete it. Let's just pretend finish it. We can again select whatever color we want in here. I typically use that color red, or purple rather. And then we can select the folder that we want to save it into, and normally I would save it into 2025. I'm not going to save this right now because imagination land. But yeah, that's the short end of how we navigate with it. And yeah, once when we're out, just following this little red line that's on the screen. We just like literally follow it. The Gaia does have a turn-by-turn option. Historically, I've never used it.
Yeah. One other thing to note is that you can, so with one Gaia account, you can have multiple devices signed into it. So, right, we've got Brian's computer and my computer, Brian's phone, my tablet, all the different devices can all be,
tablet.
yeah, all of the devices can be logged into the same account. Generally, just for sake of keeping things easy, Brian's always the one that's creating those routes and doing the recording. When we get back into Signal and turn on the internet or whatever, I can then sync my devices to see the full route of what was recorded that day. Otherwise, I can, as long as I've downloaded the offline map as well for my device, I'll be able to see everything that he's looking at on my device as well. Cool. Well, that was a lot of information, and I feel like there's still so much more that we could have talked about.
Yeah.
Let's just kind of wrap this up with some of our pro tips. So to recap, we think it's easiest to do all of your research and planning on the computer. It's just gonna, especially as someone that's getting used to using Gaia or getting more familiar with it, it'll help to just kind of see everything a little bit bigger. And then when it's time to navigate, you can switch over to your phone. Another thing is to just start simple, right? Start with just a few map layers at first, especially as you're just getting used to using Gaia. We recommend using either like Gaia Classic, Gaia Hike, really basic topo maps that are going to be a good foundation to just get used to looking at the maps with. Then, start playing around with those different map layers that are available. Just like see what they look like. I mean, there's some really cool stuff in there, like historic maps, all sorts of stuff.
Which, the historic maps, like I love looking at those because a lot of times old roads will be on those that are no longer in existence, and they've either maybe turned into unofficial hiking trails or, any number of like just cool things. It's just like fun to look at those maps once we're in camp and try to get an idea of what's around us.
Yeah, definitely just like playing around with it all. Make sure that you create an organizational system that works for you from the get-go.
Yeah.
It will save you a whole lot of time and pain, because if you've got a whole lot of pins and tracks that are just kind of all over the place and you can't easily toggle them on and off, it's going to make you crazy.
Yeah.
So
start organized, stay organized.
Exactly.
I like using years. Some people like using regions.
Or using trips, whatever makes the most sense for you.
Yeah.
Save those offline maps before you get out of Signal. And I think just bottom line is start practicing and using it even before you get out there.
Yeah, totally. Go to your local park, record your runs from your house, your bike rides, just start playing with it. The app has a lot in it, which I think is what really drew me to it.
Yeah, and regardless of what activity you're doing, you can use the same app, which is really nice.
Yeah, I think my biggest advice with all of this is once you like really sharpen your skill set with this map and utilizing like all those extra little things like Google Maps and iOverlander, and you start building these routes and you start planning with such precision, I think the habit can form to like really just be like, this is the spot that I want to camp, and like it is the golden egg, like it's the thing that I want so bad. But you really have to allow flexibility. You have to build in backup plans, backup routes. Maybe someone's in that like amazing stellar camp spot that you've wanted, or a photo opportunity, and just like going into these trips with flexibility in mind, we have learned to just create such a more enjoyable experience.
I think a lot of people, like when we say it, it sounds crazy, but it has actually made the way that we travel so much more, I guess, like carefree or like stress-free. Is just, every night we likely don't know exactly where we're going to camp. It sounds crazy, but the truth of the matter is we probably have a handful of different pins of an area that we think we might want to go to. And there's so many different factors. Maybe the weather, like the wind might be blowing and it's a really exposed ridge. It's not going to work out. Maybe someone's in that spot. Whatever the case may be, just having some backup plans, because you never know how it's actually going to work out.
Yeah, and sometimes the one that we picked out actually ended up work out for the better.
Yeah.
Like we've had plenty of those occasions.
Being willing to go with the flow a little bit.
Yeah, totally. And And also, like, if you pull up to a spot and someone's in it, kind of read the situation. Like, maybe we've not always done this, but Bethel Ridge is a really great example. Someone was in that spot. We parked fairly far enough away, but enough so that they could see us. And we had exchanged a friendly wave from a distance, and it felt appropriate at that time. And we felt welcomed enough to ask if, hey, was it okay? Do you mind if we come in and take some photos for a little bit? And they were totally cool. We've been on the other end of that spectrum where we've been in an incredible spot for a day or so and someone has pulled in, and we've extended the invite to them to just come and camp with us, and we had a great night with them.
Made new friends.
Yeah, made new friends. We're still in contact with them. Be flexible, be friendly with the folks that you meet on the trail. We're all out here like doing the same thing, having fun, or trying to. This is a lot. There's a lot with this. Like, we definitely want to hear from you guys. Like,
So let us know in the comments if you want to see more in-depth stuff about, how to use Gaia as a beginner, or maybe if there's more advanced features that you want to learn more about, or see more demos, live on-site demos of like trying to find spots in the wild. There's just so much that we could talk about related to Gaia. And ultimately, we just want to be able to help empower you guys to get outside and explore with confidence. So thanks so much. We hope this was helpful, and we'll see you guys later.
bye.
Bye.